This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz. Very excited to be speaking with Jon Batiste about Saturday Night. How are you, John?
I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I had a chance to see this film at the Toronto International Film Festival with a big, enthusiastic audience. So I'm excited that it's getting more out into the world now.
Yes, indeed. I'm so glad people are having a great time.
Can you tell me about your relationship throughout your life with Saturday Night Live?
Oh my goodness. Well, the first time that I was aware of Saturday Night Live was watching a tape in my living room of my uncle and some of my family members performing as the musical guest in the 70s. And they talked about just going to New York. I grew up in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and I come from a big musical family. And they just talked about the experience of, being these guys from Kenner, Louisiana, making it all the way up to Saturday Night Live, and the name up in lights. So and that felt to me like a goal in some way to be associated with late night and Saturday Night Live, and being blessed to have been on the Late Show and do that for 7 years. It just feels surreal thinking about that little kid from Kenner way back when watching that tape.
And what was your knowledge like of Billy Preston?
Billy's a great musical force that you study whether or not you're going to be playing him in a movie. And for me, as someone who loves the study of music and embodies musicians for periods of time, I did have a Billy phase. I listened to his organ playing particularly. He's one of the great B3 organ players. And, his approach to accompaniment, not just accompanying himself singing, but other singers, the way that he would fit into recordings and create other layers of texture. I studied that a lot. And I knew a lot about his life, just from the perspective, he played with Ray Charles. Not many people know he was the backup organist for Ray Charles for a time. And he was mentored by, there's a lot of connections between great black musicians in the diaspora that, there's a oral tradition and a mentorship tradition. So I knew of him through studying other folks as well. And he would pop up and I figured out, oh, Billy Preston again.
In your portrayal, did you feel like you wanted to really mimic his movements and the way he sounded, or this is like your take on him that's not just an imitation?
Listen, I was going all his, he does a thing where he's standing up and he's dancing and he's singing, and he has a certain carriage to just his whole thing is very signature. So I was checking him out deeply and trying to really lay into his vibe, not my own.
How do you feel you did?
I thought it was fun and great, and I loved doing it. I loved having that opportunity to have double duty. I love when I'm immersed in a film where I can be on set and I can also be either a part of the team behind the scenes or scoring the film as I was a composer for this one or doing a song for the film or whatever. I love that sort of immersion in a creative project.
And do you have any guidance here, or were there a lot of freedom in terms of what you wanted to do and what you wanted this to sound like?
Oh my goodness, the sound is something that we we had a lot of conversation about. Jason Reitman, the director of the film, and I were in conversation before recording a note about what is the music, how does it feel in his mind's eye on the film, and we came up with this vision of the music being the villain of the film because it's the clock and it's the pressure of them making it to air and having a show and everything either being on the air or falling apart, no in between. And that idea of creating pressure, but also having the humanity within the context of this mounting pressure, the vision really came to me from there. And I really thought about how could I create this sense of tension and also this sense of the rich tapestry of New York City as the backdrop and the sound of Saturday Night Live and the spirit of Saturday Night Live and that cast in particular. And weave all of these different things together to create an anti-score, which is something that, you know, doesn't have the typical string orchestra and the European classical aesthetic, um, which is, you know, just this sort of sound world that comes from Mahler and his symphonies and all this vision of symphonic composition and grandeur that is giving you the emotion. It's telegraphing how you should feel. Well, this score is a character in the film. It also is sound design in the film. It has no string orchestra. It's percussion that's driving it. But then there are other elements like tap dancing, and there's fiddle, which is in the tradition of vaudeville, and thinking about Saturday Night Live as the apex of the lineage of vaudeville shows and variety shows, and tributing Jack Benny, the fiddle player, and the tap dancers, Bojangles, things like that. And then also having the B3 organ in there, which is both in tribute to Billy Preston and that sound of late night and those bands and the horn section, and then finding the piano to kind of be the glue and also to be for the moments of nostalgia and the wistful moments, developing this sound world. And that came pretty much before we got to set. And then on the set, I composed three themes that are weaved throughout the entire film. So when you listen to the film as a soundtrack, as a score, you'll hear three themes that are constantly being redressed, represented, and they create the cohesion for what was made to sound very much like it was organized chaos on the brink of falling apart, but designed to sound that way by a lot of work between me and the engineers and everyone on the set trying to capture these moments, with no margin for error, which made the musicians feel on edge too and give them that sense of pressure. So it's all baked in a way that it was like a real high wire act trying to compose, direct the band, and score the film when it wasn't finished while still on set after shooting all day. It's an insane idea in retrospect, but that's what we did.
I do remember, feeling at some point I couldn't even hear some of the dialogue just because the music really takes over. And I think that's a positive thing because even though I want to hear what they're saying, it's like the feel more important than that is the feeling of this, again, this chaos that at any moment could just be success, at any moment could be failure. Do you feel like this was a lot more involved than a lot of your other projects, just in terms of what you're doing, or is this standard for everything you do?
I'm the guy that loves to, you know, be there from the idea sessions, and, you know, when I scored for Pixar and Soul and we worked on that, we spent so much time where we were brainstorming and talking about the vision of the music and the story in general, that it became, there were elements of those brainstorming sessions that ended up in the script and ended up influencing direction of the film. And I love being immersed like that. This was unique in particular because we did something that we didn't know if it was going to work. There was no picture. We're on the set, and I would see something that Jason would devise with the team to prompt me, and I would watch it, and it would be maybe a minute or two at most of footage, unedited, or maybe cobbled together into some form of an edit that wasn't final. And then I would take that and immediately as the inspiration hit, I would jot something down, or even quicker, I would dictate it to the band. Horns play G, A flat, C. Drums play the abacua rhythm on the rims, and then I'll tell you when to cut off, and I'm either playing the clave or I'm playing clavinet, or I'm over by the organ, or I'm playing the bass, or Nick is playing the bass and I'm playing the timbales. Just the range of what was going to happen at any moment was unknown. So this is involved in a sense of being so on your toes and so in tune with trusting the process and trusting that it was going to work out. That I don't think I've ever done anything like this before. But I'd love to do it again.
I was going to say that was my next question. That's good to know. Have you had a chance to see the film with? I don't know. You weren't at my screening in Toronto. I don't know. Can you just explain the experience of that, seeing it with an audience?
There's a great deal of pride that you have when you create something that you know is super singular and is not going about all of the rules, not because you don't know the rules, but because you know them well and you choose to break them as a team and as a composer. That's why I call it an anti score. And then to see people respond to something that is pushing things in that way with such zeal and such enthusiasm, to see them, people, when I saw the film, every screening that I've seen, folks respond in this way that's visceral. They really, there's an intensity and an excitement that you feel in the theater. So I feel very, very proud of what we created together. And it's such a collaborative effort with the team and Jason really leading the way, trusting that we can, do something that pushes the boundaries. As you said, usually the dialogue is number one. And then underneath that is sound effects, sound design, music. And even just that alone, there's so much room for innovation in film when it comes to composing with the mindset of dialogue not always being number one. And then that opens up a space for your mind and your creative faculties to go that is really more music as character. And that's what's exciting to watch people get that without us telling them. They're watching the film and people are like, "Oh, I see what they're doing."
What's next for you in the film world?
Oh man, whatever's great. Anybody who has any ideas that they really want to pursue and want to dig in deep, I'm always game to hear what's out there. There's so many exciting things that we've been presented to do. I have to really feel connected because, again, I like to immerse in the process of composing and figure out other ways to really inhabit the creative process, whether it's playing a character, whether it's any form of being a part of the team. So whenever I feel that feeling again is whenever the next thing will be.
I like to ask everyone I talk to, since this is awards buzz, what's a show, a performance, a film you've seen recently that really impressed you that you think is very awards worthy. But I want to ask you, what's the film or TV score that you're really thinking about still running through your head?
I still think about, I mean, this is like thinking about anti scores. I have a few things that like American Graffiti, going back to George Lucas. I don't think people who aren't in film like us, who are not film buffs, really understand how crazy of an idea that was at the time and how innovative that was. And I think about that often. Just this vision of let's just make the songs the score. And let's like that hadn't happened before. Or like, Trent Atticus when they did the Social Network. That was another anti-score where it was just like their watershed moments. I love what Ludwig does. His friend of mine is, and obviously he's had great sonic textures in his scores. There's just so much that I hear that inspires me. But I always go back to the intention of American Graffiti and trying to find intentions that are aligned with things that are that radical, like things that are right under our nose, but no one has employed these ideas or devices yet. They're just sitting right there. Like these records were there. And he just said, "Oh, we put this from over here, and it changes the world." So I'm always looking for that. Like I want to hear that.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing whatever you do next and wish you plenty of success with everyone getting to see and experience this film.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you. Thank you for the time.